StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that's called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is part 2 of our ongoing mini-series, which is stay out of court. And again, this is not a metaphor. This is something that I mean literally. You want to stay out of the legal system, and I'm explaining to you yesterday, if you didn't hear that episode, make sure you go check it, and today, why you want to stay out of court and why it's a very good idea for all of you to stay out of court, even if you may, let's say you are doing something that you think you are justified in doing. If it lands you in court, you might not want to do that. Let's just put it that way. So you didn't hear yesterday's episode, go listen to it, and we're going to pick up right where we left off, picking up on point number 4. Topic once again here today is stay out of court. Point number 4. Some people say, well, Dre, what about that guy Daniel Penny in New York, the white guy who choked out some black guy, and he claims it was because he was defending what was happening on the train, and how this man seemed to be threatening everybody else who was on the train, and he goes and chokes this guy out, and he was able to claim self-defense. What about him? What about George Zimmerman in Florida for killing Trayvon Martin and that infamous incident that happened back in 2013 or maybe 2012, around that time? What about these? I mean, what about Kyle Rittenhouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin? And he shoots a couple people and he ends up getting off. What about these people? I mean, these people were all those who claimed self-defense and were actually able to win their court cases, their criminal court cases, based on these self-defense claims. Well, these are good questions. I'm glad that you brought them up. Let's examine these. First thing you must always remember is that exceptions prove the rule. You can name a couple self-defense cases. These are 2 that are pretty famous. Most people are familiar with both of them. There are a few others. Snoop Doggy Dogg, for example. Before it was Snoop Dogg, it was Snoop Doggy Dogg. In the 90s, a lot of people may not remember this or even know it. Snoop Doggy Dogg shot and killed somebody and used a similar defense. He claimed self-defense, and he had to go to trial, and he beat the trial. And there are a few others that you may be able to reference or know about depending on where you live or how much you pay attention to the legal system. The problem is not about those. The problem is, what about the ones you don't know about? What about the ones you don't know about, where someone did something similar to Daniel Penny, Snoop Dogg, or George Zimmerman, claimed self-defense, and they lost? What about them? How much money did Snoop pay to his legal team to win that murder case? How much did George Zimmerman have to spend to win his case? How much did Daniel Penny have to raise to defend himself? How much did the kid Kyle Rittenhouse have to raise? How much did he raise through crowdfunding in order to defend himself in that case? All right, go and Google those. All right, that'll tell you a little bit about the kind of resources it takes to win these cases. And then you ask yourself, do you have those resources? And if you did have them, is that what you want to spend it on? Keeping yourself out of jail. See, the ones who tried and failed, those are the stories you don't hear. You only hear about the stories of people who tried and succeeded. That's why this whole concept of betting on yourself, you ever heard that phrase, bet on yourself? It sounds good. It's a great flowery phrase to use, and it sounds good when someone bets on themselves and wins. But you should ask yourself, why do you only hear about the stories of the people who bet on themselves and win? Notice you never hear the stories of people who bet on themselves and lose? Even though many more people bet on themselves and lose than bet on themselves and win. Any of you ever been to Atlantic City or Las Vegas or other areas where there's gambling? What's the name of that place up in Connecticut? I forget the name, but the Foxwoods casinos, or even down here in South Florida, you go right outside of the city, you got the Miccosukee resorts. You ever been to one of these places where people gamble? Do most people who gamble win or lose? All of you should know the answer to this question. Hopefully, if you're a gambler, you better know the answer to the question. The question is, you lose. Most people who gamble lose. Most bets lose when you're betting against the house. And when you go to court against the state or against the federal government, you are betting against the house. Most people who bet against the house do not win. Okay, so just because you can name a few examples of people who did win does not mean you should go do the bet because you can name those people. For every one of them is 100 who didn't win. Probably 1,000 who didn't win, maybe 10,000. And again, ask yourself, the ones who were unsuccessful ended up in jail. You should know about them. Those who had to pay off civil lawsuits, you should know about them. Even the ones who won, how much they had to spend on their attorneys. You should know that answer too. Do you have that kind of money stashed away? And if you did, do you want to use it on an attorney? It's always interesting to me when people try to point out the rare examples that seem to be exceptions to the rule, as if the actual rule doesn't exist. And it seems like they're just looking to justify their irrational and illogical theories. It's an irrational and illogical theory that you can name a handful of cases of people who did something that looked like maybe it went beyond the continuum of force. They were able to claim self-defense and they were able to succeed. Do not place your bets on the fact that you're going to be the next one. And again, do you want to put that much money at risk in order to win that bet? That's a lot of money you're putting at risk. What they had to pay their lawyers. If you kill someone and claim self-defense in the United States of America and you did kill them, you're going to invest a minimum of $250,000 just to prove yourself justified. It's going to cost you $250,000. Whether it's your money or somebody else's money, wherever that money comes from, it's going to cost you $250K. And you might still lose, by the way. $250K and you might still lose. If you win, okay, you just get to go and keep living your life the way you were before. You're just $250,000 poorer than you were before the situation happened. Is that what you want to do? Even if you win your criminal case, you might lose a civil case. That's going to cost you even more money. So again, is it worth it for you to go through this just to prove yourself right? All right, being right is very expensive, ladies and gentlemen. It is costly to be right. It's much more better to be accurate than it is to be right. I talked about this in episode number 2167. Being right versus being accurate, and no, they are not the same thing. Being right is about serving your ego and whatever you think you should do, could think, could say, etc., etc. That's what being right is about. Being accurate is about what is going to help me or us best get to the desired stated outcome. Accuracy is about what helps us get to the outcome. Right is about what helps me satisfy my own flesh and my own ego. Those are often not the same thing. You're an athlete on a sports team, for example. Being right might mean you get to take the most shots out of everybody, but being accurate might mean you take the third most shots on the team and the team wins the championship. See, when you're taking the most shots, the team's not going to be very good because you ain't the best player. So you shouldn't be taking the most shots. But if you want to prove yourself right, you can take the most shots just to say that you did it. But the team success is the cost of your selfishness and your success as a team, because you're on the team too. But if you're able to put your ego aside and instead focus on being accurate, i.e. I want to be on a team that wins a championship, you may get a lot fewer shot attempts, but the team is much more successful and you get more attention simply because you were on a successful team. This is what happens when you focus on accuracy over rightness, okay? And many people end up focusing way too much on rightness and lose all the accuracy in the exchange. Remember the first 3 laws of economics, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that was episode number, was it 62? Let me see. 3261. I'm gonna get that number right. I keep referencing it. 3261, first 3 laws of economics. The third law is trade-offs, opportunity costs. No such thing as a free lunch. Okay, so proving yourself right, there's a price for doing that. Point number 5, today's topic once again is why you need to stay out of court. Number 5, think about it. We touched on this in the first episode of this series. Why do so many people go to law school? I'm sure I got some law degree holders listening to me right now. Some people who studied pre-law, some people who have law degrees but didn't become lawyers, and some people who are thinking about becoming lawyers, or some of you are parents of people who are maybe in pre-law right now in college. Why do so many people go get legal degrees? Why is this so popular to get a law degree? Well, even though not all people who get law degrees become lawyers, people get law degrees because the legal profession provides a structured career path. I went and looked this stuff up. I'm not a lawyer, but this is how I know this. It provides a structured career path, and there's also a very structured and systematic way of making money when you are in. Once you get in, you have a good way of making some money when you're a lawyer. Reason why there is so much money to be made with a law degree is because everybody keeps going to court. I just explained this in the first episode. This is the most litigious society in the world. You can sue anybody at any time for pretty much anything or for nothing at all. And people end up in criminal court all the time for doing things that they could have avoided doing. My point here today is for you to stay out of court so you're not one of the people that is providing the people with law degrees more money for their careers. Trust me, they will still make money with or without you. Okay? The saying is, again, I heard a lawyer say this, if you want justice, go to the whorehouse. And if you want to get screwed, go to the courthouse. And that sounds about right. All right. Court costs money. Court costs money. Even if you go to court for your own situation, you go to court for a traffic ticket and you end up losing the traffic ticket case, you'll notice that on the final bill, what you got to pay court fees. There's a court fee. There's a fee just for going to court. You got to pay just for walking in there and taking the time of the judge. You got to pay the court fee. All right. Court costs money, ladies and gentlemen. That's the point. Okay. You don't want to be in court. While you will likely end up in a legal situation at some point, somewhere, some way in your life, even if you don't intend to, you want to limit those occurrences as much as you possibly can. That's what I want you to understand. That money could go to your kids. It could go to a trust fund. It could go into your investments for your retirement instead of going into the pocket of your favorite attorney. That's what I'm saying. All attorneys who are listening to me here today, you know, everything I'm saying here today is true. And it won't really hurt your business because despite the fact that I'm educating and helping the 2% of people who will listen to what I'm telling them, the 98% of the idiots out there will provide plenty of options for you and your future clients. So you'll be all right either way. All right, but we need to make sure that we stay out of the legal system and don't keep making stupid decisions. Point number 6, today's topic once again is stay out of court. So point number 6, I'm just taking a bunch of things that I could have actually extended this. I could have extended this series into 3 or 4 parts, but I'm going to give you a bunch of points here on this last point, number 6. It's actually an amalgamation of a bunch of points. All right, so I'm going to give you several of these right here for you to take with you. Courts, they run on money. Courts run on money. I just explained to you that you go to court, even if you win, you got to pay a court fee. You got to pay a fee just for going to court. Like, isn't this damn court being run on my tax dollars anyway? I still got to pay a fee. So courts run on money. Attorneys, every filing that gets done, every minute of discovery, every delay in the court case, every step in the court case is going to cost something. And who's paying for it? You are. All right. You're the one who's in court. You're the client. You're the one who's paying for it. All right. The attorneys bill by the hour. Okay. They are getting paid. Again, this is the reason why people go to law school, because they know the money's coming in. Even when you're right, even when you can prove yourself right, the financial drain can still screw you over even though you won. You know how much money it costs to prove yourself right in the court? Just to prove yourself right, you got to spend $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 just to prove yourself right. And again, after you spend all that money and all that time in court, now you're right back at the same spot you were before the situation even occurred. Is this worth it for you? On top of all that, the process itself is a punishment. The fact that you have to keep going back and forth to court. The fact that you got to go through the metal detectors every time you go to court. The fact that you got to sit there in that dusty ass room with a bunch of other people who are also going to court, or whoever else is in there, and you got to deal with the people who work there, the security, the clerks. You got to deal with all this stuff every single time you go to court. Whatever you were supposed to be doing, like going to work or spending time with your kids or enjoying your life, you're not doing that because you're sitting in court. Again, even if you get found innocent and you are in the right, the mental, emotional, and financial toll of going through that process is a non-recoverable cost, i.e. no refunds. All right, the legal system is designed to operate slowly because there are many cases going on. Judges and courtrooms can be backlogged on cases, and these things can drag on for weeks, months, years. And while a case is dragging on, you got that thing hanging over your head, and you're supposed to live your life and hang with your kids and enjoy lunch and sleep at night, while all the while you got to keep thinking about this case is hanging over your head. Again, do you want to deal with this? The quality of life cost of having a court case that drags on for months while you're sitting there wondering how it's going to go. Is this worth it? Further, lawyers win no matter what you do. Again, I've said many times, I'm basically selling you on a legal career right here. Lawyers get paid no matter what happens. You win, you lose. All right, of course, case gets delayed, you settle out of court, whatever. A lawyer gets paid no matter what. All right, again, it's a good thing to be a lawyer if you decide you want to go that route. Now, I'm not saying be a lawyer, but I understand. No matter what happens, your lawyer gets paid. All right, and lawyers are generally, the incentive for the lawyer is to have more complexity in the case, because the more complex it is, the more you need the lawyer and the more you got to pay. I'm not saying lawyers do that on purpose. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm not saying that all lawyers will do that on purpose. I'm also saying that not all lawyers will avoid doing that to again make sure they're needed and make sure they continually get paid. And remember that even when you think you're in the right, the outcome is not guaranteed. No matter how good of a lawyer you have, there's no guarantee what you're going to get. Look at any court case when you see someone get found not guilty and the energy of relief that comes over that person, no matter how good the case is. I mean, it sounds simple now looking back at the O.J. Simpson case, but they could have just as easily said guilty and his life would have been completely different than what it ended up being had they said guilty rather than not guilty. All right, he didn't know how that was going to go. All those lawyers, all that money, F. Lee Bailey, Robert Shapiro, Rob Kardashian, Johnny Cochran, and everybody else he had on that team, that dream team of lawyers that O.J. Simpson had, he still could have lost. He still could have lost. All right, you don't want to be in that situation where a jury is deciding your fate, even if you think you're right. Do I want somebody else deciding if I'm right or not? I'd rather just me decide that I'm right and leave it at that rather than have to convince 12 people to agree with me. What do you think? How do you feel about that? I don't want 12 people. I don't want to have to convince 12 people to agree with my perspective. I want to just have my perspective and let that be that. Your reputation, you end up in a legal situation, depending on what the situation is, or even a civil situation. Your reputation is in the garbage. Right now, as I'm recording this, as of this recording, by the time you all hear this, this has already begun. But a guy who I mentioned in my virtual mentors episode, his name is Sean. Many of you call him Puff Daddy. I mean, P. Diddy. I remember him as Puff Daddy. When he came out, he was called Puff Daddy. Sean Puff Daddy Combs. I mentioned this guy in episode 195 as a virtual mentor, not because of anything he did off the microphone, but things he did business-wise and entertainment-wise in the hip-hop industry, of which I am a product. Sean Puff Daddy Combs, or P. Diddy, he is going to be on trial. I believe the trial is it's supposed to start around early to mid-May of 2025. So by the time you hear this, the trial has already begun. This guy, first of all, has had this case hanging over his head for damn near a year. So every day he wakes up and goes to sleep, he's thinking about, am I going to actually get to live the rest of my life? He doesn't know yet because all this time the charges have been against him, but the case hasn't started yet. So can you imagine having a charge against you that could possibly cost you the rest of your life in prison, but then there's a whole year before you actually get to go to court and defend yourself? So for that whole year, you just got to think about the fact that this might happen or it might not happen. And you just got to deal with that anxiety all day, every day for a year straight. Could you imagine that? Many of you wouldn't want to deal with that for a week, let alone an entire year. On top of the fact that your reputation is in the dumpster. All right. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Sean Combs, even if he wins this case, his reputation is so trashed and so damaged. And listen, we haven't even seen the evidence in the case yet. He hasn't even gone to trial yet. By the time you hear this, the trial has begun. But all the stuff that we have seen and heard he's accused of, the things that we have seen, the videos, the video of him beating up his girlfriend in the hallway of a hotel years ago, all these things have so much tarnished his reputation that even if he wins his case, he can't come back on a political level. I don't mean government politics, but political meaning relationships, etc. He can't come back the same way as he was before now that this case is hit. That's not even considering the civil cases that are going to be thrown against him. Someone who is as famous as this guy, he's going to get a bunch of civil cases thrown at him by a bunch of different people who all smell blood in the water and an opportunity to get money out of a guy who has made a career out of letting you know how much money he had. So there's a trade-off to everything, ladies and gentlemen. I told you this. Everything has a cost. So be careful what you ask for because everything has a cost. A civil case can bankrupt you. If you get a civil judgment against you and you can't pay it, you can be bankrupt by that. And often, this is the reason why you see so many cases get settled out of court, because people don't want to go through that and get a judgment against them. So how about we settle? You just sued me for $50 million. How about we settle and I just pay you $10 million instead of going to court and possibly having to pay you 50? I'll just give you 10 and go away. And again, do you want to give up $10 million of your own money? If you had it, would you want to do that? Also keep in mind, folks, that justice, and any lawyers in the room can co-sign this or tell me that I got it wrong. If we're talking about jury trials, the winner is the lawyer who gives the best performance, not necessarily the lawyer who has all the facts on their side. The best performance. You don't want to know why O.J. Simpson got off? Because he had a guy named Johnny Cochran. Everybody knows what Johnny Cochran said. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. They won because of that. I'm not saying that was the entire case, but I'm saying that was the entire case. Johnny Cochran put on the best performance. That's why they won. Understand that jurors, the 12 jurors who are deciding your outcome, they're human too. The judge is human. All human beings have bias. There's no such thing as a completely objective human being. There are none. Juries have biases, and a jury can be swayed by a good performance the same way that you can be swayed by a good performance, even in court when they're supposed to not allow that to affect them. But again, you can't program a human being to not have human things affect them. All right, so even with all this being said, folks, even if you're right, you might still lose. Would you bet and gamble your life on this? I wouldn't, but you do what you wish, as you wish. Let me recap today's class. This is part 2 of our mini series here. Why you want to stay out of court. Number 4, some people say, Dre, what about Daniel Penny? What about George Zimmerman? What about all these other cases, people winning self-defense cases? Understand that these are the exceptions, not the rules. All right, because you can name a few exceptions does not mean the rule is not still the rule. You don't want to put the fate of your life in the hands of a jury or a judge based on self-defense for the things that I've already explained to you. Point number 5. Why do so many people get law degrees? Because there's always money to be made in the legal system, because the legal system is designed to drain the people who get into this court system of their money, and it goes into the pockets of the system itself and to the people who work in the system, i.e. the lawyers. So if you're a lawyer, you made a good career decision if your aim was to make sure that you are doing something in which money is always flowing, because it's always flowing in the legal system. Number 6, courts run on money. Attorney filings, discoveries, delays, every step costs something, and you are paying it. You are paying it to your lawyers. There's the cost of quality of life of a court case hanging over your head, whether it's a misdemeanor, stealing something from a store that you stole by accident, or it's you pulled out a gun and shot somebody because they looked like they were trying to break into your house. You got to sit there with that hanging over your head until it actually gets resolved. And through all of this, the opportunity cost is your quality of life, your peace of mind, the actual financial money. And with all of that said, even if you believe you're justified, you might still lose. All right, do you want to play that game? I would suggest you don't. All that said, everybody, workonyourgameuniversity.com. Have me as your direct coach. Let's get to work. Let's get to precision. Let's get to execution. Let's get to collapsing time frames and achieving your 10-year goals in the next 1 year or less with me as your direct coach. That's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Also, go to dreallday.com/AI. Start engaging with Dre GPT 1.0. That's my brand new open and available free chatbot. Again, that's dreallday.com/AI. Links to all of those things down below in the description. Work on your game. Dre all